So we missed the intros, but that's all right. There is a chat feature in the bottom bar of your Zoom screen, and I don't know why mine is not showing up, but it's not.
Well, I don't mind people coming off mute to ask a question either, Marion. But probably better to ask your questions during, if they're short questions, clarifications, right while we're still on the slide, and then leave longer questions maybe to the end.
Yeah. So,
But we don't, if you're getting lost, so is everybody else. So stop us right then and there and ask your question.
all right. So we ready to roll? This is around the race course. Starting first with, so most of this presentation was put together by US Sailing, and most of it is around the race course with the racing rules of sailing. We have added on a few things. So for example, we are going to cover the racing rule changes for this quad. The racing rules change every 4 years. Generally, they change after the Summer Olympics, and so 2021 would have been after the Summer Olympics, except the Summer Olympics didn't happen. So, nor did most of 2020. The rules went ahead and changed, and for us, that's not actually a problem. For our Olympic athletes, it's a little more problematic, but they're dealing. We're going to cover key definitions, and we're going to talk about how the rules fit together as you go around the race, and how do they change in various scenarios as you go through the race. So which ones apply, which ones turn on. We talk about them turning on and turning off. So basic principles, first of all. Ours is a self-policing sport. We're one of the only ones on the planet. And what that means is that we are governed by a body of rules that we are expected to follow and enforce. And the fundamental principle of sportsmanship is that when a boat breaks a rule and isn't exonerated, she will promptly take a penalty or an action, which may include retiring. It also talks about the fundamental rules of sailing, Rule 2, which is fair sailing, which is sportsmanship, and Rule 4, which is acceptance of the rules. And I put those up front because we lose track of the fact that you all are the ones who really enforce the rules. And we know that it's not always happening. Okay, thanks, Karen. We know that it's not always happening because Nancy and I are seeing fewer and fewer protests every year, and we're pretty sure there are not fewer and fewer rules being broken every year. So nobody wants to be that person who is protesting everybody, but if people are not penalized for breaking rules, they continue to break rules. So I encourage you to protest, and I encourage you to protest. I'll just leave it at that. If you have been, if your rights have been violated, or a rule has been broken, it is your responsibility to do that. Come on, slide. Oh.
Slide. There we are.
Okay.
Nope, back one.
Go back one.
There we are.
This is Nancy's section.
Yes. So I'm just going to walk you through some of the changes in this new quad that are going to most impact you as sailors. There's a lot of changes, but the good news is most of them are not game changing for you sailors. And if you want an exhaustive discussion of the new rules on the US Sailing website, you can get a great little article by Dave Perry that goes rule by rule. And there's also a nice article by Dick Rose. And he's also discussing the rules, why they changed and what they mean. So the thing that I think is going to impact both race committees and sailors the most is the new definition of start and finish. You may recall that in the old rules, it was the hull, the equipment, or the crew in their normal position. And that's been changed to just the hull. We only are going to be looking at the hull to determine if you're OCS and to determine if you're finished. Now, my race committee friends, Mary Ellen and Susie Schneider and other PROs that we all know, actually think this is going to be a little bit easier for them than hulls move around less than sails. But be aware of that. You won't be loosening your spinnaker a little bit to try to beat the other boat. There's a couple of reasons for this. One was that it was viewed as perhaps easier for race committee to make a good call. And the other reason is that we do anticipate that we will have the technology like they used for the Boston Marathon, and that while we won't be able to place that little device on your chute or at the end of your sprint, we will be able to put it on your hull. And it is anticipated that we may have that technology before the end of this quad. So that's why this rule was changed. The next thing is that we have changed the way that sail the course and old Rule 28, which required you to pass all the marks, and they still do that. But now we have sail the course as a definition instead of embedded in the rule, which seems to be a better place. So you can see on your screen, the definition is there. I'm not going to read it to you. And so that really hasn't changed for you as a practical matter when you're sailing. But just be aware that if you're looking at Rule 28, you'll now find the definition in the definition sections. Can we get the flag slide, please?
Yes, I hope so. There it is.
I hope so. Other changes are, a lot of clubs have been using the orange flag to start and the blue flag to finish for a long time, but now they are official race signals.
Yeah,
And
we have
so,
backwards.
yeah.
We had the orange to start and the blue to finish, and then went to all orange. And now we're going back.
It works pretty nicely if you're finishing on the opposite side of the signal boat than you're starting on, because otherwise you're going to have to change flags. And I'm not sure of everything you do, because mostly when I come down, it's a bigger event. The other new flag is the V flag, which is that red X on a white ground. And that's telling you to monitor your communication channel for safety instructions. And that is channel 72 in your NOR and SI down there at Beverly Yacht Club. And I know that in this sailing world, there's still people who turn their radios off. Mary assures me that no one at your club does that. But we have a couple of people.
Because we are required to keep it on.
Quit that laughing.
Oh my God.
There's going to be several good important reasons to keep it on. One is, if you see that V flag go up, there's going to be special instructions from your PRO. The other is, at some races you may attend, you'll see that an obstruction can now be signaled by something other than just a traditional hail. And here in Marblehead, we have written in the use of the VHF for that. Now we figure we'll all start screaming obstruction, obstruction at the top of our lungs first. But then we did give the opportunity to get on your VHF. So prepare to see that, especially if you come up to visit us further north. Next slide, please. And other changes, Rule 14, the world hasn't changed, but one of the things we did is we rolled all the different exoneration language, which used to be in 3 different places in the rules, including Rule 14. Now it's all in Rule 42.
We should have read the email.
I know.
Somebody needs to go on mute.
We might have to go over there and spend the night. Go over
Now-
on Friday, forget
Well-
his dinner.
Well, why don't you look for,
Okay, somebody's now muted. Rule 16.2 has changed, and it has created a lot of confusion. Rule 16.2 is the anti-hunting rule. And it's that rule that used to say, if a port boat is going to duck to the stern of a starboard boat, the starboard boat cannot change course. Now this has been changed. Now the starboard boat shall not go down, shall not bear away, but can luff up. And the other language that's confused a lot of people, it no longer says to go astern, it says to go to leeward. Now, my understanding is that you are course racers, fleet racers. The change to 16.2 really is going to impact team racers. And that leeward language simply eliminates a move that was made commonly in team racing. And so it's, come to one of the team race sessions that we give and we'll tell you all about it. I will tell you on New 16.2 that Dick Rose, who writes the rules and represents the United States at World Sailing for rule writing and rule changes, bet me a dinner in my favorite restaurant that I would not see a single protest under 16.2 this summer. So I don't think it's going to change your life. Most starboard boats are happy to let you dock. 20.4, that's what I referred to in the way of obstructions. You can now have visual signals, you can have arm motions, and you can use a VHF as well as the old help, I need room in an obstruction, there's an obstruction up ahead. Remember, there's no set language for an obstruction. You can say anything you want, but do try to make it clear and make it timely. As we said before, Rule 28, the definition of sailing the course is now a definition as opposed to embedded in the rule, and you can find it there in the front of your book. And then Rule 40, life vests. 40.2 used to tell you that if you wanted all the competitors to wear life vests, that you should fly a Y flag. And it was in the class rules, and it was in sailing instructions and NORs for junior events particularly. But now this has been made much more clear. And I understand from Mary that your Beverly Yacht Club NOR and SIs require you to wear life vests. Do I have that straight,
Yeah.
Mary?
Yeah, all fleet.
So no matter what boat you're on, even if it's big, you're going to do this safety thing. We want to keep the sport safe.
Mhm.
Next slide.
Come on.
Come on.
You can do it, computer. All right.
There we are. There's a couple of other changes, just if you're looking for something. 3 and 4, rules 3 and 4 have been swapped around. 5 and 6 are rewritten and expanded. And now what used to be 7 has been included in 6. So you can just go to those rules in the front of your book. They usually don't, they're really important rules. And you should review them once a year, but they're not going to impact you as much on the race course as just in your knowledge of how we want to operate our sport. Now,
Yeah.
a big, yes, go on.
3 is your decision to race. So that's the one that says the skipper always decides if you're actually going to sail or not. It doesn't matter what anybody else says. If you think it's blowing too hard, you are welcome to sit this one out. And 4 says you guarantee to accept the rules. So there we are, another plug for protesting if people are not, in fact, accepting the rules.
Yes. Now, big differences this year will be the notice of race and sailing instructions. The notice of race has become a lot longer, and the sailing instructions have become a lot shorter for most venues. Note that in the slide, a rule in the notice of race need not be repeated in the sailing instructions. Back in the old days, we'd issue the notice of race about 12 months in advance. And then the night before the event, we'd finally finish the sailing instructions, print them laboriously, and hand them to you at the skipper meeting. And we don't do that anymore in the real world. And in fact, for most events nowadays, we write them at the same time. But because so much good information is in the notice of race, like your courses and whether you have a throw out, all kinds of good stuff is in there. I would have both of them with me if you're the kind of people who like to have it on a hard copy in your boat, in your nav station. or if you're racing a wetter boat, maybe a laminated copy, have them both. Now they're easily available digitally now. And so, but remember, lots of stuff that you used to find in the sailing instructions is now going to be located in the NOI. Next
So
slide.
if you're not in the habit of reading that 50-page notice racing guide, you need to read the beginning of it until you get the part that comes before the pages for each of the individual series, because that is the notice of race. And then the individual series pages are just the little addendas for those. So there's a lot of information there. The notice of race is on the website, on our website, so you can in fact download it and put it on your phone or something. And the sailing instructions have been copied with the harbor chart on the back, and they are laminated and will be available through the office shortly.
Very nice. Mary, the next slide will be yours.
Yes, and that is all the new rules. Does anybody have the changes to the rules that most impact you? Does anybody have questions at this point?
Good.
Okay. Then we are going to now blast to the race course. So more definitions. These have not changed. We're just reiterating because they're going to come up a lot. So keeping clear, a boat keeps clear of a right-of-way boat if the right-of-way boat can sail her course with no need to take avoiding action. And when the boats are overlapped, if the right-of-way boat can also change course in both directions without immediately making contact. So if the right-of-way boat can do both of those things, if it's appropriate, then you have kept clear. If not, you haven't. Room is the space a boat needs in the existing conditions to, whoops, I got to move the people now.
Oh, take a minute and move people.
Including the space to comply with your obligations under the rules of Part 2, which are the rules when boats meet, and 31, which is rounding a mark, while maneuvering promptly in a seaman-like way. You can't diddle around here, and you're not supposed to lose control.
Something to think about with this rule too is it's a seaman-like way.
Right.
Which is a defined term. You don't need to be, it doesn't matter whether you're Dennis Conner or the new person, everyone's held to a seaman-like standard. And that is important because sometimes in the room, Mary and I hear things like, well, I'm a really good sailor, so I could get a lot closer. Well, we look at it more in terms of everyone needs to be seaman-like, and you need to give people the opportunity to have that level of skill. And we don't care if you're Dennis Conner, and we don't care if you're new. We expect you to be at this level.
And you're not allowed to terrify people.
Oh, good idea.
You know, driving the fleet away, it does not make it more fun for anybody.
No, not at
The
all.
amount of space you need, the amount of space that a boat needs, bigger, faster boats clearly need more room. Smaller, slower boats need maybe a little less room.
Everyone should be muted, I think.
Yes, everybody should be, except for Nancy and me. Existing conditions, you know, is it a screaming sou'wester or is it flat as a pancake? Clearly, the harder it's blowing in the bigger seas, the more space a boat is going to need than if it's really light and you're all just sort of drifting along. And promptly means exactly what you think it is. Little or no delay immediately. And seaman-like, as Nancy said, is befitting a competent seaman. And even beginners can act like competent seamen and should be allowed to. This again includes your ability to comply with the rules you need to comply with as you're sailing around the course. Mark room. What is mark room? The room that is required for a boat to leave a mark on the required side. That makes sense, yes? So it starts when the first of two overlap boats reaches the 3 boat length circle. It's now 3 boat lengths for those of you who lost that change. That was a full quad ago, but so blue is in the circle, at the circle. So orange has to give blue room from this point. And there they go. Mark room is the room for a boat to sail to the mark when her proper course is to sail close to it. So here's orange having to give room to blue, but notice that blue is trying to fall off and there's a red X there, which means blue's not allowed to do that. And we're about to tell you what that's all about. So if you are the inside overlapped windward boat, as blue is, entitled to mark room from that outside boat, the orange one, the outside boat must keep clear of the outside boat must keep clear of the inside boat. There's a typo. I didn't type this slide, so I'm not taking responsibility for that one. And that's one of the appeals cases, case 70. Room to sail to the mark, however, means room to sail to the mark. It does not mean you can fall off the way blue did and then round back up again. You have to go to the mark. And just because you want to round it wide and clip it on the back side because that's going to give you an advantage, in this situation, you're not allowed to do that.
Right.
All right, so you can have space to go around the mark. You do not have space to make a tactical rounding. Does that make sense? And this brings up the definition of proper course just briefly. We're going to come back to this, but the difference between your seaman-like rounding around the mark and proper course could be two different things. Okay? Swinging wide on a leeward mark and clipping the back side, well, not really hitting it, but coming very close, tactically is a good move. And so that could be considered your proper course because it's going to get you around the course faster, but it is not okay in a mark room situation like this.
Now, if you go back for 1 second, Mary, the other thing is blue in position number 3 is entitled to make that turn, to begin going upwind. And orange, as long as blue has not taken more room than she's entitled to, let's say the conditions are requiring in position 3 that blue be that far away from the mark, then blue is entitled to head upwind. In this particular situation, it looks like blue has taken a little bit too much room and then caused a contact incident.
Yeah.
So again, it's very situational.
And I think the next one is yours.
I think you might be right. Yes. So now we're going to talk about our basic right-of-way rules. And we'll start with Rule 10 on opposite tacks. When boats are on opposite tacks, the port boat shall keep clear of the starboard tack boat. We all know that one. Does it have? It has a little more. Now, how do we know what tack a boat is really on? Most of the time, that's pretty apparent to us, but not always. A boat is on the tack, starboard or port, corresponding to her windward side. It doesn't matter, with one exception that we'll get to, how your sails are sitting. It's your hull. It's the wind hitting your hull. Now, leeward and windward, a boat, these are all defined terms at the beginning of the book. A boat's leeward side is the side that is, or when she is head to wind, was away from the wind. Because when you're tacking, you're still on a tack, although we will come to a rule that tells us that you lose rights when you're tacking. However, when sailing by the lee or directly downwind, her leeward side is the side on which her mainsail lies. Now, I race the J70, and we enjoy the use of this rule all the time because we sail wing on wing. And we sail wing on wing when it's above about 10 knots all the time going downwind. And so we can change tacks by moving our mainsail. And the first few years of really competitive J70 sailing, we had to remind people that it's the mainsail, not the kite. So keep that in mind when you run into wing on wing boats, which you will certainly do if you come to Marblehead, because there's a lot of us. And then the other side is simply your windward side. A boat keeps clear of a right-of-way boat when the right-of-way boat can sail her course with no need to take avoiding action. And when boats are on opposite tacks, a port tack shall allow a starboard tack boat to sail her course, again, with no need to take avoiding action. Taking avoiding action generally means, did you move your helm? Did you turn your wheel? Did you move your rudder? Next one. Another definition that's important is obstruction. Now, we both have a lot of rocks. We got a lot of rocks up here. You have a lot of rocks down there. Most of the really nasty ones are no sail areas for us, but it can come up. And remember, sometimes in big events, you've got out-of-town boats that just don't know where these rocks are as well as you do. So an obstruction is defined here as an object that a boat could not pass without changing course substantially if she were sailing directly towards it and one of her hull lengths from it. Now, normally we start hailing before that, but that's the moment when we're going to decide if there really was an obstruction there. When the boat that's hailing and asking for some room is one of her hull lengths. An object that can be safely passed on only one side in an area so designated by the sailing instructions are also obstructions. My other yacht club is Chicago Yacht Club, and we have water cribs. For those of you who've ever sailed out there, we have these water pumping stations. And after 9/11, they were ringed in buoys. And so it was against the law to go in there. But we had a case go all the way up on appeal. And now, even if you're breaking the law, you can win the race, which I did not like as a judge, but it happened. And so we need to be careful in our sailing instructions to state these unusual obstructions. A boat racing is not an obstruction to other boats unless they are required to keep clear of her. Or if Rule 23 applies, to avoid her. Rule 23 incorporates things like capsized boats. A starboard boat is an obstruction to a port tack boat. However, a vessel underway, including a boat racing, is not a continuing obstruction.
Yeah, continuing instruction is something like a shoreline.
Yeah. So here's some important points. We're just going to kind of illustrate them with the boats. Here comes a red starboard tack boat. It is an obstruction to yellow and blue. Now, the right-of-way boat, which is the leeward boat, is going to get to choose how they would like to pass the obstruction. And most likely they will choose to go behind. At that point, you've got an inside and outside boat. So here's some pointers. The object must be large enough to require a substantial course change. So the starboard boat would be liable, or would be large enough. And look at that shoreline with those trees growing. Well, you're not going to go up in those rocks. See that little stay clear area? That's probably where there's some special rocks underwater. So be aware of that. People should be looking at their charts if they're in a new venue. And we're going to determine how big of a course change you're entitled to from considering it at a one boat length from whatever the object is. Remember, object includes that starboard boat. And the size of the course change for you to hail for room at an obstruction must be substantial. Substantial is going to be a little bit subjective, but again, similar to other things that Mary was discussing, based on the size and speed of the boats, the conditions of the current, the wind, the waves.
Yep.
We can go on.
So
Oh, that's you.
yeah,
Yes.
in the starting area, let me back that up again. They're all on starboard tack, yes? So what does that mean green is now?
Still on starboard.
Still on starboard, so she's an obstruction, right?
Yeah.
So question,
Not at the start.
Yes, she is, because she was a starboard tack boat. So until she actually completes her tack, she is still an obstruction. And now she's head to wind, so she's still an obstruction. Who has
Rule
rights
eight-
here?
Yeah,
Huh?
Rule 18 does not apply at the start,
Right.
but Rule 19 and 20 do. And that might be where you got a little bit confused. It's easy to get that confused. So who has rights?
So orange or blue?
Who's the right-of-way boat? You guys can come off mute and answer our questions. We like to hear from you. You've got two boats on the same tack, overlap. So you're gonna have a windward leeward situation. And the leeward boat has right-of-way, correct?
It's the
Let's
orange
see.
boat in the circumstance, because it's got an obstruction in front of it, her.
Well, so looking just at the blue and the orange, because this is how we're going to determine what happens with the obstruction. Looking just at the blue and the orange, who's right of way?
Blue.
Blue. So that means
Blue.
blue gets to decide how you're going to deal with the obstruction.
Mhm.
And blue has two choices, and here they both are. Blue can duck
Mhm.
or blue can come up.
Mhm.
All right.
Mhm.
So blue gets to decide. If blue decides to duck, well, if orange asks for room, blue can say, nope, sorry.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Right.
Orange does not have the right to ask for that room
I
Because
agree.
they're windward.
because they're
Mhm.
windward.
Yep.
It's still an obstruction, however. So
Mhm.
19.2A applies, which says blue has to choose. And if blue decides to go to leeward, at
Mhm.
this point, then they have to give orange room to come as well. You can't peel the orange boat off on the obstruction. Not allowed.
Oh, okay.
So if you had that thought, just
Mhm.
take that right out of your head.
Okay.
If you are the leeward boat, you cannot peel somebody off on an obstruction.
Okay.
And if blue decides to come up, then orange is going to go up with them because now they're being left.
Yes.
All right. What if green wants to pass between blue and orange here? Can she do that? That's where angels fear to tread, right?
Yeah.
But can she do it legally?
What do you guys think?
Overtaking boat, which green would be,
Yeah.
must make sure she's got room to execute that maneuver without hitting anybody.
Very good. Wait a minute.
Very good.
Okay. So here they are. Here comes green.
Uh-huh.
And she is entitled to do that if
Uh-huh.
if there's room.
Mhm.
Blue's an obstruction, and so is orange.
Yep.
Green's required to keep clear of blue because she's coming in to windward and from behind. But she's not blue isn't a continuing obstruction. She's a point obstruction.
Mhm. Okay.
And so it works as long as green, when she overlaps orange, she's going to gain right of way because she's now going to be leeward boat. Yes.
Yes.
She has to give orange room to keep clear, which includes room to swing into attack, swing her stern into you. Well, not on purpose, but if she has to
Right.
tack,
Mhm.
then she's got to have room to do that.
Uh-huh.
And blue. Wait, my lamp's in the way.
Mhm.
So orange has got to keep clear and give green room to
Uh-huh.
pass between her and blue if she's able to. Now, if there was less space in there,
Mhm.
this looks like there's almost a boat length in there. If there was only a boat width in there, that's not room. There's no room for green to go there.
Exactly.
So it has to be a pretty big hole to dive into.
Mhm.
Okay. And I think we're back to you, Nancy.
Okay, so we're still at the
Yeah.
start, and you'll recognize Mr. Orange there, known as the barger. Now, the word barging is not in the rules. So prior to the starting signal, there's no proper course. And you can see, and I don't have what's next coming up on the slide, Mary, so maybe give me some, yep, both boats are approaching. And of course, orange is trying to get in there, and blue is closing the door. This is a windward lured situation. We have overlapped boats on the same tack. They're both on starboard tack, and blue is closing the door because if blue doesn't get it closed pretty soon, orange will get up in there. And once orange is trapped up in there, she can stay up in there. So this is when I teach rules to brand new sailors. I always say, when your skipper's yelling, go up, go up, go up, what rule is that? It's windward lured. And at this point, lured boat, blue, has rights. Now, blue can't change course so quickly that orange has no escape. Now, at this point, orange can barely escape.
Yeah.
And I don't think orange can duck anymore. Orange has got to go up sharply and to avoid the committee boat. So here we have hailing, no room. And remember, as we have been told that 18, 19, and 20 do not apply at a starting mark surrounded by navigable water. So when I said 19 and 20 do apply at the start, they do, but a mark can be an obstruction because a mark is an object. And in this case, though, we're talking about an obstruction as a mark, and that race committee boat is a mark. So it is a mark surrounded by navigable water. So as long as blue closes the door in time, orange can have to spin up and really have a crummy start now instead of the pleasant barging that she had planned. So we talked about on the same tack overlapped and how the windward boat has to keep clear. And then the other thing to point out is 16.1. When the right-of-way boat, which is blue, changes course, she has to give orange room to keep clear. She can't wait until orange has nowhere to go. And I think we've all seen that, but it can be good to think of it in rules terms instead of what we all know from. Yes, a question?
What?
Ronnie is here.
I hear Peter.
Okay. This is still you.
This is still me. So not only does that apply at the signal boat, but the same exact concept is applying at the pin. Look at these two port tackers coming in for the port tack start at the pin. And there's only 4 boats in this race, so there's plenty of room at the pin, and in they come. And it's exactly the same rule. You've still got a windward lured boat.
Pam, you have your hand up.
I was trying to do a chat, but it kept going to Bill Holloman. But at some point, could you just tell us what the required hails are? You were talking about hailing them and when they were.
There's
overall
only
barging.
that's a great question, Pam. There's only 2 required hails. One's protest and the other is the hail, which doesn't have specific words that you make it an obstruction. And so there's no particular hail. And in fact, there's no reason to hail. Now, would it be very smart to hail something like no room? Absolutely. Because nobody likes orange on their nice blue hull or green on their nice red hull. And so you can, like, if you're watching racing with professional sailors, you won't hear hails they all know. With us normal people, talk to the other boat as early as possible. You know, I'm going to shut the door. I'm coming up. No room. Get out of here.
Yep.
Okay, next one. I think we covered pin end.
I think the
Is this one me or you, Mary?
Before and after the start. So different things
Ah,
happen before the start and after the start. All of the barging was before the starting signal. And it's all going to come down to how was the overlap established? Is there a Rule 17 proper course limitation on the lured boat? And that limitation begins at the starting signal.
because that's the first time we have a proper course.
Right.
When we're all milling around before the start, there is no proper course. And that makes sense, right? Because we're all looking for that beautiful hole.
And then after the start, though, blue may be required by 17 to sail her proper course, depending on how the overlap was established. And I think it's going to run us through here. Yes.
It is.
So here we have on the same tack, not overlapped. Orange is clear astern. And so she needs to keep clear of blue because she's clear astern and overtaking. Right? So now they're overlapped. Orange is windward. She needs to keep clear of blue. There goes the starting gun. So now we have a proper course, and blue needs to continue to give orange room to keep clear. Now we're past 2/10 of a second past the start. On the same tack, proper course for blue.
Blue can't do this anymore.
Whoa, blue didn't come in from behind. So she is not bound by Rule 17 and she can luff as she pleases because
Right.
the overlap was orange coming.
It was orange that got the overlap. Thanks,
Yeah,
Mary.
orange got the overlap. So therefore blue is not bound by the proper course. If it went the other way, now blue is overtaking. She needs to stay, she's not overlapped. So she needs to, hang on, I read that too fast. Blue has to keep clear because she's overtaking. There we go. That's what I'm trying to say. Now blue has acquired right of way. So orange has to keep clear, but blue has to give her room to do it. Here's the start. Blue continues to have to give orange room to keep clear and can now not luff head to wind because she has to sail, blue has to sail her proper course because she was the overtaking boat.
And her proper course is to get to the first upwind mark without consideration of the other boat in the rule, which is orange. Now,
As fast as
Rule
possible.
17 is a very important rule in team racing. I have never actually had a Rule 17 protest. I was telling Mary earlier today in my 30 years of judging. I have never actually seen one. And the reason is I tend to sail and judge larger fleets, and people lose track in that milling around before the start of exactly how the overlap occurred. But if you do know how the overlap occurred and you can remember it and all that milling around, this can be very important.
And I would recommend that you get something that can act as boats. They could be pencils, they could be paper clips, they could be little boats cut out of paper, and drive them around on the table and see how things change so that you sort of get a feel for it. So when you're actually out there on the starting line, you have a better sense for what's going on. So blue's proper course. What is blue's proper course in this instance? What's she trying to do?
This is a trick question.
Yeah.
Because it looks like, doesn't it look like blue came from clear astern? See
Mhm.
blue down there? So
Mhm.
here's old blue, clear astern. Position 2, here's old blue, there's overlap. So that would tell you that Rule 17 is turned on. And now we see old blue head to wind
Yeah.
almost. But
Can you do that?
can you
Thumbs
do
up,
that?
Thumbs down.
So let's think about what proper course is again.
Yeah,
Proper
what-
course is for
course?
blue blue to get to the upwind mark as quickly as possible without taking yellow into consideration, right?
So if
So-
yellow wasn't there, what would blue do?
Same
Clearly,
thing.
she's not laying the starting line, right? John?
Yeah, she's
what-
trying to pinch across the line.
Right,
Yes,
so
blue
that
would
is her
pinch
proper
across.
It
course.
is, yeah.
so
It
it
is.
is.
Slow though.
So, but should she be having a conversation with yellow?
Good idea.
Yeah,
She should be having a conversation with yellow. My proper course is to pinch up around this mark. And
Mhm.
so I'm coming up, so you better come up too.
Mm-hmm. And the pin is an obstruction.
Yep,
She has to.
The pin is not an obstruction.
It is not.
No?
Pin is a mark. The bow, another bow would be an obstruction,
Oh.
but not the pin. It's a very difficult, I mean, it's common to get mixed up. That's why we keep restating it.
and again, blue can do this, but she has to give yellow room. So if you can tell back there between position 1 and 2 that you're gonna be in this mess, you should be talking to yellow.
Okay.
Okay, so yellow can begin to get out of the way now because you're
Mhm.
giving her room, and that will establish the fact that you're giving her room.
Okay.
All right, Nancy, take us to windward.
Here's windward legs. So we're going to discuss what might happen when we get a wind shift. So you see wind 1, wind 2, that's your wind shift. So our basic scenario is port is keeping clear of starboard. So port is blue, keeping clear of yellow starboard. And we get a wind shift. Now, most of the time in a wind shift, you think, well, your boat moves, your boat changes direction, even if you don't change your sail trim. And so we get a lot of questions on this one, because even though yellow is right of way, starboard tack boat, that wind shift causes her to change direction. And that is a change of direction, even though it was entirely related to the wind. She didn't, you can see by looking at her sails, she didn't change her helm, she didn't trim her sails. But 16.1 still protects that port tacker, the keep clear boat. And so we say yellow has changed course, and in doing so, she absolutely has to give blue time to keep clear. And it looks like that it depends on what happens, but if blue went up, she kept clear. It's also possible that she did not keep clear, depending on her actions. But we also get to look at starboard under 16.1 and say, did starboard give adequate room to port while altering course? That makes sense to everybody?
No. That was bullshit.
No. All
Yeah,
right,
we
let's go
got to
back.
talk about lifted and headed. Okay, because that's the change in the wind direction.
Yeah.
And if starboard boat yellow gets lifted when the wind changes to position 2, port getting headed is in a world of hurt.
And so, but that's the point of rule 16.1.
Okay,
Yeah.
So
So-
16.1 is going to prevent the starboard tack boat from taking that lift.
oh,
Can't do it because port is keeping clear. If the wind had
Yeah.
continued, right?
yes,
Port would have been clear
uh-huh.
because of yellow's lift and port's header. Now
Mhm.
port can't keep clear. And 16.1, she
Puts that back on our friend starboard. John, is that a little bit clearer? And could that be hunting? We had a
No.
question pop up. It could be, and that would be 16.2.
Mhm.
if hunting did occur in this, it can all combine, you know, the rules change. They're very fluid. They change as boats go along.
It also
So-
suggests to me that that is the first line of defense for a port tack boat who's being protested by the starboard boat. That's their first line. Oh, there was a wind shift. I got headed. I had no chance.
Well,
And you lifted into me.
there's going to be more testimony that goes into that, but also look, this is in a matter of 2 boat lengths.
Ah,
Quick,
okay.
Right.
race committee may have information about wind shifts. They should in their log, depending on how significant this wind shift was. It's pretty significant here, as you can
Yeah,
see.
this is-
Yes.
And it's sudden.
Mhm.
It's sudden and significant, and it behooves both boats to keep a good situational awareness, because this is a difficult protest, as you kind of hinted at.
How can it be
Mhm.
proved? How can it be proved?
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly, that makes a difficult protest.
This is
Yes,
opening
it
up,
does.
this is opening up a huge problem if this is true.
Well, this is true.
Absolutely.
This is
not
true.
new, Mark. This is not new at all. This has been the rule for at least the last 4 years.
Oh, yeah, no, this has been the
Not a
rule
rule
for,
change.
this has not been a rule change for at least 4 quads.
So
16.1 is very stable.
it's just something that you haven't run into. And now you have.
Well,
What
I've never,
usually- yes.
it opens up the possibility for it to be abused by the port boat. And who's to say what's right or wrong, but was there
So
a
that
shift
would
or was
be-
there not?
That would be rule 2.
It's a dangerous scenario.
That
Well,
would
and I
be
think,
sportsmanship.
yes, if rule 2, if, let's say that port boat used a wind shift as a defense and said the starboard was lifted, but no one else is aware of a wind shift. The race committee didn't record a sudden wind shift in their log. Starboard said there was no wind shift, but look at these situations.
But I
Starboard was going behind the port boat.
I always interpreted
Boat length.
type of situation as there was no intentional change of course by the starboard boat.
Doesn't matter.
Leave it.
That's what we're trying to illustrate here. The starboard
I
boat,
understand,
it changed course,
Seamus.
taking no action of its own, but starboard still has responsibility under 16.1. And lots of competitors, that can seem like a really new concept but starboard didn't really do anything.
Have you, in protest committees, have you come across this where the port tack boat uses this as a defense? Have you come across that?
Rarely,
had-
yes.
You
Yeah,
have?
I haven't seen port use it as a defense, but I've seen lots of 16.1 protests in my life,
Mhm.
But
unlike 16.2.
but using a wind shift argument to try and get out of trouble as the port tack boat that's been protested, have you ever come
No.
across that?
Not
I
really.
have not.
Okay,
And
In
Mary,
my
has
experience, it's been that if you're port starboard and is a situation and your port boat, go home.
not.
You're not gonna win it. You're not gonna win it.
Well, I certainly wouldn't want to try to game it.
Right.
And everybody needs to keep situational awareness on shifty days, especially.
And this is a long-term developing situation. This is when you can tell in position 1,
Cut it out.
whichever boat you are,
Cut it out.
that you are going to, if you're starboard, you're passing a stern of port, and if you're port, you're passing ahead of starboard, and everybody's cool with that. And then all of a sudden, oh, wow, it's getting closer, it's getting closer, it's getting closer. And at this point, the port boat does not have room to tack. He's past the point of no return.
Yeah.
Already at position 1.
You know,
So,
Nan,
So now remember, if you see the upper position too, this shows you that the smart port pulls his sail right in and does the best he can to get away, and the smart starboard lets his mainsail out and goes behind port as originally planned. And then nobody breaks a rule.
Right.
Nancy, I have a question when you talk about race committee, keeping records of this. At least where we race, there's certain areas where you're off of land that you aren't sitting on a committee boat. And this is sort of newer to me recently, doing some committee work, that the wind is completely different. So I'm not always sure that the race committee boat can see these wind shifts.
They might not.
Absolutely true.
But
They
the
may
boat-
not see it. And
You might.
if you were port and counting on this defense, I'd go out and get about 3 or 4 witnesses that were near you that could talk about this massive wind shift that hit very suddenly.
Now, it's going to be close, right? So this is still you, Nancy.
It's still me. So how close is too close? Well, it depends. We've had this slide in here for a million years. You recognize this one from when we were jits, Mary?
I think
So it's not a set number of feet. It depends. Are you driving the race car or the tractor? What are you passing? And what's coming in the opposite direction? So let's think about it as boats, because I don't pass that many tractors. It depends on all those conditions we keep talking about. What kind of boat? How fast the boat's going? How far apart the boats are? What's the visibility like?
Back up.
The angle of convergence,
Back
all
up.
of them. Oh, did John have
Okay.
a question?
I don't think so.
I can't tell. All right. So all of these key factors are really important. And when you're out there racing, again, situational awareness, you've got all these things on your mind, and you can't say, well, I gave him 6 inches to clear me. If you're racing large perf boats on a windy day, if you're racing small dinghies on a very still day, and
Stop it.
you can get pretty close.
Stop it.
All right, next one.
Now we're up. We made it to the windward mark. Yay.
Yay.
So coming into the windward mark, these 2 boats are not overlapped when blue hits the zone. Therefore, yellow must give blue mark room, which includes room to jibe at the mark if that is blue's proper course, and blue in this case is not jibing. That's more because blue is ahead, clear ahead, and yellow is becoming the windward boat, so blue is clear ahead and leeward, so yellow has to give blue whatever she wants at this point.
Yeah, yellow's obviously, it's one of those situations where yellow's a much faster boat for whatever reason. Maybe blue just recently tacked outside of the zone. But we do see this kind of protest a lot.
Yeah.
And remember, that sail sticking out, you've got to take that into account. Like blue doesn't, there they are side by side at 2. And then at 3, blue's back ahead. So it's a very kind of a realistic
Yeah.
mark rounding. Eventually, blue is done.
And then blue jibes.
Yep.
So when you're approaching a mark to be left to port, there are times when people come in on port tack and tack within the zone. In this case, both blue and orange are passing head to wind from port to starboard in the zone, fetching the mark. Yellow and green have both been on starboard since entering the zone. So therefore, blue and orange break 18.3 if they cause yellow and green, yellow or green in either case, to sail above close haul to avoid contact, which happens in the blue and yellow scenario in position 3, and in the orange and green scenario in position 4. So you
And I
can
think
tack there if there's a ton of room, but you need a ton of room, and you can't force that boat on the outside of you to go head to wind. So here's a blow up of it. So
And
yellow
one
tack,
thing, one thing that to point out is in position 2, what tack is orange on? She's still on port.
still on port.
She didn't make it to settle into starboard tack. Now, of course, it's always nice when Stan Honey comes out and he paints the white lines on our race course, but he doesn't do that every day. And so usually when you hear a protest like this, orange will be saying, but I had completed my tack, and green will be saying, no, you didn't.
Okay. And then for the yellow and blue scenario, we start with port starboard. This one's a little different because now blue's ending up on the outside here, but yellow has come in on starboard. 18.3 applies. Yellow's overlapped inside of blue just prior to position 4, and blue has to give mark room to yellow. Again, this is because yellow is the leeward boat.
Yellow's been on starboard, fetching the mark outside of the zone. Here she comes, and blue better, at position 4, blue better get herself out of there as quickly as possible, or she is going to foul yellow.
Okay, I'm giving Nancy the starboard roundings.
You are, huh?
Yeah, I'm so nice.
Here's a starboard rounding. And starboard roundings are different than port roundings under 18.3. And so when we see this with a starboard rounding, go through the facts again, blue and yellow have flipped over and they're approaching a windward mark to be rounded to starboard. Now we see this maybe if it's a Wednesday night and you're using government marks. Roundings to starboard are somewhat unusual going upwind. And this rule has been written to say there's a different way if you're rounding to port than if you're rounding to starboard. So here we have similar facts. Blue on port is fetching the mark, yellow on starboard, tacks from starboard to port, clear ahead. Remember how we decide if somebody's clear ahead or overlapped? We draw that line through the stern. We get Stan Honey to come out and paint that line on the water, so we know for sure. And so in position 1, you've got yellow is already in the zone and she's on starboard. Port is coming in, and you'd think maybe there would be a mirror image, but that's not what happens. So when yellow tacks from starboard to port, clear ahead of blue, and gets down to close haul, and then blue luffs to avoid hitting yellow's stern. So let's talk about who has right of way. At position 1, we have port and starboard, right? Starboard has right of way. And remember, right of way is different from Rule 18. Okay, so next, can you give us the next dot? At position 2, who has right of way?
And I cut to the answer too fast.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
sorry about that. It's the way these slides work. And so now blue is while tacking, and under Rule 13, a boat does not have rights while tacking.
Blue still has right of way.
But blue has right of way. Wait a minute. At position 2, yes, blue is tacking, and Rule 15,
Yellow's tacking
blue has.
too. Yeah.
This is a confusing slide, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
I didn't prep this one, so
No,
Um,
we didn't write this.
We did not write these slides. What happens next? Let's see if we can figure it out for all of you, because we know the answer, but the slide is a little funny. Is there a position 3 that they tell us? Okay, so I think what this is saying is how the rights change depending on the position of the boat. So at 1, yellow is the starboard boat. At
Yeah.
2, blue is a port boat that is tacking.
No, blue
And
yellow's tacking.
oh, yeah, but yellow, that's
That's
what
what
I'm
blue's
looking
right
at
away.
3 and 2. Sorry, guys. It's been a long COVID season. So yellow is tacking and blue is not yet tacking. So blue has right of way because yellow loses her rights under Rule 13 while she tacks. And then Rule 15 does not apply because of the way she acquired right of way. And then at position 3, we're back to not overlapped. If you draw that little line, 3 is clear, yellow is clear ahead. So she still has rights. We're gonna fix this slide later.
Yeah.
And however, Rule 18 is different from right of way because the boat that entered the zone on starboard, that entered the zone first, doesn't matter whether port or starboard, is inside boat and is entitled to mark room. And 18.3 does not apply to starboard roundings, which is where we started this whole slide. So you don't get the same result as you got for the port rounding.
I have a quick
Good enough.
question that might be overly team race specific, and if so, tell me to pound sand and I'll figure it out another way. At a lot of like European 2-on-2 team racing does actually utilize starboard roundings and starboard boxes.
Yes.
So in this, this is a situation with only 2 boats, but say there were other boats at situation 2, what's to say yellow is actually tacking versus just going head to wind? And when, because that's actually, basically a starboard mark trap of,
Right.
you have someone coming in on a blue coming in on port, but yellow has another yellow teammate that is actually up off their windward hip. And that's actually how you move them
Right.
forward.
Right.
And I can take a quick look to see if team racing changes that, makes any changes here, because I gotta tell you, I'm rusty. So let's go to the team racing and we'll just see if it changes the rule or not, because I think you're right. That's a good mark trap. And of course, in team racing, for those that don't team race, and Shane obviously does, you've got a different set of rules and you always know where everybody is. Let's see, match racing, working my way to D, appendix D, and just seeing 18.4 is deleted. 18.3 is unchanged.
Yep.
So you would still have a difference between a port rounding and a starboard rounding. And I say that I'm not a team race expert, Shane. So it's something that if you give Mary your phone number, I will have a team race umpire call you to discuss his favorite subject. How's that?
I've got some emails of team race umpires, so no worries, and I apologize for derailing the slide linear progress.
Okay, so we're just gonna keep going then, Shane. Another starboard rounding scene.
All right, let's see what happens with this one. So here come blue and yellow, and at position 1, yellow is entering the zone. And
Oops.
so they're in. Now let's start. This slide has a start at position 3. Yellow's well in the zone. Blue has entered the zone. We're still a starboard rounding. And we've got a starboard yellow and a port blue in position 3. So who has right of way? We're not into Rule 18 yet. So that's just right of way would be port starboard, right? So yellow has right of way.
So yellow's got right of way.
And there it is. And
Yeah.
yellow is
3 and
limited.
4, yellow is tacking.
Yes. They tell us that up at the top. This one I had trouble with when we were starting the slides. At position 4, we go back up there, and between 3 and 4, we've got some starting to tack. And at position 4, yellow has completed her tack and is on close haul. So at position 4, we have a port tack boat, completed tack, and we have another port tack boat, clear astern. So we have, who has right of way?
Yellow.
Yellow, the clear ahead boat. And see, this is where,
What?
yeah, this is the one I was talking about earlier, Mary, about you don't, it says yellow is somehow tacking in there, but at position 4, it also says they've completed their tack.
Yeah, so I think they meant to say between. Okay, so we're just gonna keep going and that's that.
Yeah,
So
this is
blue
another,
lured, which is where we thought we were going.
yes. So blue becomes lured at position 4. And at position 5, they're both up there, and we have a windward lured, right of way is with the lured boat. Now, do we have anything else on here about Rule 18?
Yeah.
Aha! Somebody gets mark room. Go back. And remember 18.3, because it's a starboard rounding, doesn't apply. And so that starboard tack boat that came in fetching the mark doesn't have the same sorts of rights that it does in a port rounding. And so blue is entitled to mark room.
Huh. Wow.
And we're going to fix these slides because they're very confusing.
Yeah, before we do anything else with them.
Yeah.
All right. And then heaven forbid.
Here we have touching the mark. And poor old blue has touched the mark. And not only that, yellow has had a clear view of this heinous crime, and blue's got to do something. So this is a mark that begins, bounds, or ends the leg of the course on which she's sailing. Now that can be important because if you touch a mark, let's say you're doing a short mark, a short upwind mark and a long upwind mark, which we do sometimes in Marblehead because we have slower boats and faster boats. So different fleets will go to a different mark. If it's not your personal mark, you can hit it all you want. But in this case, blue has hit a mark of her course. So blue needs to take her 1-turn penalty for breaking Rule 31. And the first thing she needs to do is get well clear of other boats as soon after the incident as possible, and then do her turn. And we see a lot of boats that are not getting well clear of other boats. And you need to take that turn just as it's illustrated here. You don't get to take attack and then sail along and then take a jibe later. You need to have one motion. The one exception to that is if another boat does something really unexpected. I think it's pretty clear to blue that yellow is going to just round the mark here. But if yellow, for instance, had some really bad boat handling issue and managed to get up there into the middle of your turn, there'd be nothing you could do. But you need to take, under normal circumstances, you need to proceed with a circle, pretty much. One tack, one jibe. And you get to come back out and keep going.
Yeah,
And in the meantime, blue has to keep clear of all other boats that are not taking a penalty turn. She's gotta stay away from yellow.
okay. Now we're going downwind. So rule 17, on the same tack, proper course. If a boat clear stern becomes overlapped within 2 of her hull lengths to leeward of a boat on the same tack, she shall not sail above her proper course while they remain on the same tack and overlapped within that distance, unless in doing so, she promptly sails astern of the other boat. So if somebody's trying to go past you, boat clear astern becomes overlap within, well, they're going to show us. So you want to know how the overlap was established? If it's coming in from clear astern within 2 of your hull lengths of the windward boat. And your proper course, remember, is the course you would sail to finish as soon as possible in the absence of the other boats, referred to in the rule using the term. There is no proper course before the start. We've already talked about that. And different boats may have different proper courses at the same time,
This is
particularly if they're going
really
to
common. Yes,
different
sprint boats, we sail way different angles than what we refer to as old-fashioned pole boats or legacy boats.
Okay, be nice, be
I'll
nice.
be nice, I'll be nice. And as Shane knows, Rule 17 is critically important for team racing.
Yes. So here's blue coming in from clear astern and then luffing above her proper course. Her intention was to make it difficult for yellow to stay ahead of her. However, in the absence of yellow, if yellow wasn't there, blue wouldn't luff. She would just keep going because you can see down in the corner here, her proper course would be to go straight, not to luff up. So therefore, she's breaking rule 17.
This is real obvious, like in a team race, even though it's so quick moving, because team racing is done by really very skilled people. And also because you know it's going to be an important rule, you're watching it. In fleet racing, again, you may or may not know how the overlap was established, but to the extent you do, keep an eye on a boat like blue.
Yeah. Now here's same course for yellow and blue, but in this case, blue is luffing up to go higher than the slower gray boats in front of her. She would do that even if yellow wasn't there. So in this case, it's okay. Do you see the difference?
That makes sense about proper course. She doesn't get to take yellow into account because yellow's the boat referred to in the rule. But she gets to take the gray boats into account. And so she gets to do it.
Now here we have yellow coming into leeward just for something different. But she's more than 2 boat lengths away. So
she does not
17
establish
doesn't apply, and she can sail up to head to wind.
because she didn't get her overlap from clear astern.
Because she's two boat lengths away.
Yeah, they converged rather than, and you can see why I say sometimes in fleet racing, if there's 6 other boats around you, you might not be quite sure how yellow got her overlap.
Right. Okay, Nancy, you get the S curve.
I get the S curve. Here it comes. Position 1, we have 2 boats. They're on the same tack. They're overlapped. And what's going to happen here is we're going to talk about breaking an overlap. So 2 heads up and breaks the overlap and then reestablishes the overlap in position 3 when they fall off again. Now, again, as Shane knows, in a team race, this would be 1,000,000% purposeful to break the overlap. And then when you reestablish the overlap, you've changed the rule than if the overlap just stayed. So blue luffs hard to break the overlap and then bears away, causing the overlap to begin again. Yellow does not have to give blue room to keep clear under 15 because the way that right of way was gained was as a result of blue's action. So if you look at Rule 15, acquiring right of way, I think it helps to read the rule for this slide. When a boat acquires right of way, she shall initially give the other boat room to keep clear unless she acquires right of way because of the other boat's actions. So yellow is not responsible for blue's hard loft to break the overlap, and therefore it's not on her. But again, you see a lot of this in team racing. So yellow now has to promptly bear away to a proper course because she obtained her overlap from clear astern. Remember, blue made yellow be clear astern. And now Rule 17 comes on for yellow. Rule 15 wasn't on, but Rule 17 is. Again, it's a good team race play. And we have a question from Tap. And you know what happens to me is the question disappears.
Oh, so who was asking the question?
It said Tap.
It was me. So
Yeah.
I wondered, why would blue purposely break the overlap if it was gonna lose blue's option to be given room? If it was gonna make yellow no longer obligated to give blue room, why would blue purposely break that overlap?
Well, we don't know how the original overlap occurred. It may have been that converging side to side.
Mhm.
And in this case, blue is now established that yellow has achieved her overlap from clear astern. And so now blue controls yellow under Rule 17. So blue is going for control ultimately.
When they break that, then they get control. But then in the next step at position 3, yellow's back in control and doesn't have to give blue space. I don't know exactly what their marker is or whatever, but so why would blue do that to themselves?
Well, because now,
Because here in
Even-
4.
because now lured boat cannot come up. And if you see this in team racing, if you're trying to
Oh, okay.
slow down yellow so your blue teammate can get past you, this would be a pretty good mark trap.
Oh, okay, I get that now. Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, it's also not specifically for team racing too, because
No.
it could be, this diagram is with the absence of a mark. And if proper course is then to jibe, blue is, incentivized to do this so that he can force yellow to jibe and, go to a mark. That happens in fleet racing too.
Yeah.
Yes, you're absolutely right, Shane. Good point. Okay, let's move on. Here's the downwind leg. And we have yellow, clear astern with no overlap. So in position 2, however, yellow is now just barely achieved the overlap to leeward of blue from clear astern, and they're within 2 boat lengths. So they're not going to have that converging thing. So now they are overlapped based on the definition. And now yellow jibes to port. So blue and yellow are still overlapped because there's a special clause in the definition of overlap that says most of the time boats are only overlapped if they're on the same tack. But when they're both more than 90 degrees off the wind, then they're still overlapped. But Rule 17 only applies when they remain on the same tack. So what happens is Rule 17 did apply because originally yellow achieved an overlap from clear astern, but now the overlap is broken for Rule 17 purposes only. they're still overlapped, but rule 17 is turned off. And so now our friend jibes back. So we get to position 4. So now they're both on starboard again. And now we have an overlap that has occurred that is not from clear astern. Yellow may luff because she's not restricted by rule 17 anymore. She broke rule 17. She broke herself right out of it by jibing and jibing back. And she didn't even change course to do that. It was her sail, her main sail determined what jibe she was on, not her hull. We talked about that at the beginning. And so what position are we in? Well, she's not burdened by 17, so she can head up. And rule 15 requires her to initially give blue room to keep clear. And then as she changes course, 16.1 says she gives, that's a, 1 is when you acquire right of way, 15 is when you require right of way, and 16 is when you change course. So again, the rules go from 17's off, 15's on. That's just for a little bit, a little short while initially, like Mary said in her slide earlier. And then we go to 16.1 due to the change of course. So she's managed to turn 17 off.
Which is why she did it.
Which is
Because
why
wanted
she
to
did it.
run the blue boat.
Okay. Any questions
All right.
on that?
Okay.
All right.
And then another variation on the theme.
Another variation on the theme. So what happens here is blue is the port boat, and in position 2, she's passing without really needing to duck or anything. She's passing cleanly behind starboard. So there she is. And then in position 3, blue bears away, creating an overlap. Blue needs to create that overlap. So she moves her bow into the overlap position. And because blue and yellow are both sailing more than 90 degrees off the wind, they meet the definition of overlap. So she's achieved overlap. And then in position 4, she jibes. So now they're both on the same jibe, and they're overlapped on the same tack now. Now, blue established her overlap from clear astern when the boats were on opposite tacks. So rule 17 does not apply. So 17, this is still illustrating that 17 doesn't rely on the definition of overlap. It relies on them being on the same tack. And so blue can luff head to wind, but must again observe rules 15, acquiring right of way, and rule 16.1 when changing course. So similar, and again, blue's doing this on purpose.
Yeah. All right.
Got that one? On to Mary.
We're coming down to the leeward mark now. So
At
similar to the windward mark, the first boat that gets to the zone establishes the overlap that determines who else is going to either owe them room or they will have to give them room. In this case, the blue boat, yellow is on starboard, blue is on port. Again, because they're more than 90 degrees off the wind. That part doesn't matter. What does matter is that blue is at the zone and yellow is overlapped with blue because she's forward of that red dotted line across the transom. So therefore, blue is going to owe yellow mark room for the mark if yellow can get there fast enough. So blue has to keep an eye on yellow. It may not, the way this is drawn, it's not going to be a problem, I don't think, unless blue catches a lobster pot. But if they were
yellow's a much faster boat, perhaps.
or a much faster boat, it could be a problem. So here we have 3 boats overlapped, yes? Blue is overlapped with yellow, yellow's overlapped with green and blue, and so therefore green is overlapped with blue. Green is the windward boat inside. Blue is at the zone. Green doesn't have right-of-way.
She's windward boat, right? She couldn't have right of way.
Right, so she doesn't, I'm thinking like, what? Yeah, she's windward boat, so the lured boats have right of way. However, blue and yellow have to both give her room to sail to the mark. And her course is to sail close to it, and then spaced around the mark is necessary. That's what I was talking about earlier, where a tactical rounding is not going to be green's option here. Green's going to have to go to the mark. She can't swing it wide and come up close on the other side, but she will get room from both yellow and blue. Another version, only this time, green is what? She's lured.
Lured boat. So green is now the right-of-way boat in addition to being entitled to mark room under Rule 18. And it does make a difference.
So blue and yellow have to keep clear of her, give her mark room, and green and yellow must jibe when it's their proper course to do it. They can't carry her beyond. They can't carry blue beyond, but blue may have to wait until both of the other two boats jibe to go around. And I think we're at you, Nancy.
Oh, I think we are.
Yeah. I think
All
so.
right. So here we have blue and yellow again. I don't know why we're using match racing colors. And blue is clear ahead when she reaches the zone. And further, yellow is the starboard right-of-way boat. So way back when Mary and I were first judges, Rule 18 turned off right-of-way. And there's still people confused about that, even though it was now 8 years ago that we changed it. And so you have to think of two things: who's right-of-way and who gets room. Okay, so yellow's right-of-way, but blue is the one that owns that mark because she's clear ahead. And so yellow is it's probably not gonna be a problem unless yellow's a very fast boat again.
Okay.
Okay, I think that's all that's on that slide.
And that's
And
all on that one. So now we're going to try a different version.
now we're going to try contrasting a different version. So here's old 18.4 again, and good news, 18.4, it's a nice port rounding. So now we have an inside overlapped right-of-way boat. That's what 18.4 is covering. So now we have yellow is a lured boat. So she has mark, but she's also right-of-way boat. And when she must jibe at a mark to sail her proper course, and the only way she's getting around that mark is to jibe, then until she jibes, she shall sail no farther from the mark than needed to sail the course. So again, she doesn't have the opportunity to do a tactical tight and wide. She has to jibe right at the mark, as in a seaman-like way. She may not luff away from the mark prior to jibing if that takes her further from the mark than her proper course. And her proper course is going to be to round the mark and carry on with the next leg. And if this is a wing mark, then jibing right at the mark might be yellow's proper course. Now, the first thing I had to do here when I was prepping this slide is say, what the heck's a wing mark? And you'll laugh at me. And for those of you who use that term, because I didn't know what it was, and I think, having consulted with another national judge, Mary wasn't available, that is what we would call a reach mark. And so that might be the term you're more familiar with. So proper course can change depending on where yellow is going next. And that's really the point of this. If it's a lured mark, then making a tactical rounding might be her proper course, and then she'll be entitled to it. And if it's a gate mark, 18.4 doesn't apply at all, and that's right in the rule. It's the last sentence in the rule. And that's all for that slide.
Okay.
And
Now we have a mess.
now we have a mess. This is what we call a mess. So green, yellow, and blue, they're all interacting with each other, and along comes red. And as we learned earlier in position 2, after red jibes, she is now got gray overlapped inside of her. And keep in mind, red doesn't have a wonderful view of gray, does she? Because look at who, red is really kind of looking at blue, yellow, and green, and gray's out there. So what happens next? There is an overlap, and gray and red continue to be overlapped when the first of them enters the zone. Well, I guess we take that on faith that gray's going to get there. And red must give gray mark room because gray's going to get there first. And the trick here is that red really has to have a sharp eye out and be aware that gray's there. The tactician or somebody needs to say, hey, gray's back there.
Oops, sorry. Yeah.
And that's really all there is on that one.
Yeah, and we seldom have 4-boat pinwheels coming into marks, but this is the trouble you can get into in a big fleet. If you're in a pinwheel like that, you have to keep an eye out for gray because they can come squeaking in if the pinwheel's big enough and you're outside too far. So coming into the finish, is this me? Yes, this is me.
I think this is you.
Yeah, the preamble of section, I think so. Yeah, the preamble of section C of part 2 turns 18 off at a starting mark, but not at a finishing mark. So there is mark room at a finish mark. And don't let anybody tell you there isn't. 18.1 turns it off at a windward mark, including a windward finishing mark when the 2 boats though are coming in from opposite directions. So port starboard is going to prevail over mark room. But in this case, we've got both boats, yellow and blue, on starboard. Blue wants room and yellow owes it to him. All right. Yellow's not allowed to peel him off on the committee boat. Got to let him in. Same thing happens if you're coming in on port.
And so this slide is mostly to help you distinguish that from what happened at the start.
Right. And then finish, boat finishes, this is the new definition, when any part of her hull crosses the finish line from the course side. So getting your crew to hike out or loosening your spinnaker or anything like that isn't going to do it anymore. It is your hull. But you've not finished if you still have to take a penalty under Rule 44.2, which is the alternative penalties, or if you need to correct an error in sailing the course made at the line. I'm not sure what that might look like, but I guess in a big fleet, you could end up on the wrong side of something. Or if you're continuing to sail the course. So blue finishes, she's no longer racing because she's now finished beyond, she's gotten and cleared the line. Yellow is finished, but she is still racing because she's still in the finish area. And that becomes important because until she has cleared the finish line in marks, she is still racing. So yellow is still racing until she's outside the buoy. And why
So
do we
you
care?
still want to cross the line, period.
Well,
no,
then
You don't
know
want to
you've
just
done it,
touch
but
it.
you may not want to. Yellow's fine. Yellow has finished. The race committee will call her finished. They're at between 2 and 3. And she,
Okay.
you know, maybe she's got a pee. I don't know. She wants to get off and away so she can go do something. The point is, until she clears the pin, she's still racing, and that means anybody else coming along, she needs to pay attention to. She can't just sort of break out her water bottle and start gabbing. She has to pay attention until she's clear.
Okay.
and we do see boats do this if there's a big pile up of boats, just like wind dies and just on the other side of the finish line, and she goes, uh-oh, there's a TP 52. I think I'll just head, I think I'll just touch the line and then keep going.
Hmm.
But it is uncommon as you observe.
Yeah, so she can clear the line in either direction. And then, oh, I didn't fix this part.
I checked case 127, you'll be happy to know,
Yeah,
and it does still say,
it still says this. Okay,
it still says this.
well, they'll have to fix it. All right,
So-
so you've cleared the line and the marks when no mark is influencing your choice of course, and you know when you're clear of the finish line. We don't have to tell you that part. Okay.
But the one thing to remember about that case, and that case may change, but as of today, that case says the definition of finish is your hull, but the definition of clearing the line is
Is
your
everything.
hull, your crew, and your equipment. So if you're in a Viper 640 and your crew just slid off the back and he's still floating there on the finish line, you have not finished racing.
Finish line.
for him.
And you do have to go back and pick him up, so don't lose
Yeah.
him.
Don't lose him.
And here's what I was talking about. So 3 is still racing technically because they haven't cleared the line. You don't want to be, blue, you don't want to be blue because you're not making friends with yellow doing this.
And you're interfering with a boat racing.
And this rule number this is the one that's changed, right? Or is this the one we fixed?
Is that
Should be
23-1 now? No, we fixed, that's 24-1. Let me double check.
No, it's 23-1.
It's 23-1.
Yeah.
We borrowed these slides from our friends in Minnesota.
And they were updated the end of April, but he missed this part.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we need to fix that one. So as Mary said, here's a bad move by blue. And, even though blue has finished, you know what happens when you interfere with boat racing? You've committed a foul and you can be DSQ'd in the nearest race in time if you meet the qualifications for that.
Yeah.
So
be careful where you are. Oh, and then here's the other sad tale that we're giving to Nancy.
now here's another sad tale. Here I am touching a finishing mark. Now, sometimes people say, can I take my penalty turn like this boat does, like around the mark? And the answer is yes. You have to take a turn and you have to end up completely on the course side before finishing. If there's not a lot of other boats in the immediate neighborhood, that's a pretty good way to take your penalty turn. And so this boat has fulfilled all the requirements of finishing after taking a penalty turn. The boat could also have taken the turn above the line here and then just sailed back around, but it was a whole lot quicker to do it this way.
Mm-hmm. And then this one's yours too.
This is mine too.
Which we kind of already talked about a little bit.
We talked about this. Yeah, this is about, here we have a blue has caused starboard to have to duck her. And so she gets well clear of other boats, takes her 2-turn penalty and sails off. Now, one thing to check in your sailing instructions for events you do this year, in town and out of town, for a lot of sport boats, we are changing 2 turns to 1 turn or 2 turns to 1 turn unless you're in the zone. So do check that because it's tragic if you don't take enough turns. And it's also tragic if you take too many turns and you miss a couple of places and you're off the podium because of it.
Right.
So
Yeah, 'cause
read those documents.
The standard penalty is 2 turns. But
Yes, it is.
Appendix V is a single turn. And then there are percent penalties. So make sure you read those things, just like Nancy said. And, oh, I forgot to let you finish this one.
Yeah, okay, so keep in mind that if you cause injury or serious damage or gain a significant advantage in the race or a series, your penalty is to retire. And Mary started with that concept. And sometimes we do see in the room that a boat has attempted to take a penalty, but usually didn't realize the extent of the damage they had caused, and will come to the room, and most people, when they become aware, will then retire after the finish. And lots of judges are watching for this getting well clear of other boats. And that is something we see a lot of people don't do that. And if you haven't done that, it's not an appropriate penalty turn.
And stringing your turns along also doesn't, there's supposed to be one right
Right
after.
there. Yes, one right after the other,
If
just
you
like
don't
that.
have one And then do the other one, that doesn't count. So thank you all. We're going to take questions in a second. The rule book is this thick. If you don't have one, you can get them through US Sailing. You might be able to get them at West Marine. If you are a US Sailing member, they're cheap. And if you are not, they are more expensive.
Right, there's $7, you get one for
Yeah.
$7. And after that, you pay $34.95 up with 20% off. It's
Right.
so confusing. It's
So-
harder to understand than the math rules.
You do in fact get something for your US Sailing membership on dollars off your book. You also get the Mobile Racing Rules app for free for your phone, and it is great. It allows you, you've got the rules, you've got the appeals and cases, you've also got Dave Perry's book or excerpts of it. So those are good. And, feel free, if you think of questions tomorrow, the next day, next week, feel free to come on back and contact me. I can give you Nancy's email if you want to talk to her. We have some certified judges in the club, Christina McDavid,
Yes.
Susan Mead, Jed Hoffer. I'm forgetting someone, and I'm sorry about that. Nico,
Kim Lee, you said Kim.
Kim Lee, thank you.
Kim, Christina, Jed, you,
Susan.
and Susan.
Nico is becoming certified. And then many of you have sailed for years, long enough that you need to remember to look in the book because you can't remember which quad you read the rule in and you got it stuck in your head the wrong way. So this is always open book. Open your book. But do ask questions. Are there any other questions? There's something in the chat. Hang on. So my
I see
chat
something
is,
in the
I've got
chat
two
from Lori.
screens going and my chat is buried.
Oh, you're welcome, Lori.
Oh, those were thank yous.
Yes, that was a thank you from Lori. That was very nice. No other questions? Okay, now remember, every other quad, the book changes color. We're in the red cycle. The blue book is mildly dangerous. I always keep one because occasionally I want to go back. But take that blue book out of your nav station. Hide
Yeah.
it someplace.
Put it in the bookcase where it belongs.
Yes, the red book is the book now. And don't come see us in the room.
Still up.
unless
Is
you
it
really
still
need
up
to.
because it didn't go back down?
Oh.
Hi.
Hi. All right.
Alrighty then. Well, thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
Thank
you guys
everyone.
very much.
Thank
It was very helpful. Thank
We
you.
will
very much.
Thank
see you
you.
out of the water,
Good
and
to
I
see
will try
everyone.
to.
Thanks a lot.
I think I did
Bye.
record it. So
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, Mary. Bye, everybody.
Bye,
Bye.
everybody.
Thank you all. We really enjoyed here.
Thanks a lot.
stop.